welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about superlatives in the month of February about Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love talking about superlatives. I love it. A very special series, very special episode, and we have some very special patrons that grace us with their patronage each month that we would love to thank.
There are some very special patrons that we would love to thank. And as always, it's without those folks who give a couple of bucks every month that we are able, it's because of those people who give a couple of bucks a month that we are able to keep the lights on here at the podcast, and we're able to do lots of giveaways as we have done for the whole month of February. Every time we release a show, we've been giving away all sorts of awesome stuff, APs, swag, just all sorts of cool stuff. So I would love to thank Reagan. Reagan is the newest patron on the list. And going backwards in order of joining is Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Alex, Edmund, Peter, Joe again, Niall, Carl, Vardane, James, Jake, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, Phil, Joseph, and Dominic. And if you would love to be a patron of the show and help us give back to the community, all you have to do is join us at patreon.com/cardtalk2018, and you can give at any level. And to be eligible for swag, you have to be a Patreon at the $5 level starting in the month of May through when we give it out in October. And we plan on giving swag to everybody, a little token of appreciation, but the big swag is at the $5 level. So, guys, I wanted to just review what we have done this whole February here.
We're amongst a special series, our superlative series.
Yeah, and so superlatives are like best, worst, cards you can live without, cards you can't live without. If you could get rid of something, what would it be? Things like that. So, and as we wrap up the month, we promised our listeners a very special episode to wrap it all up. So this is the 13th episode in our Superlative February extravaganza month. And I promised everybody 12 plus 1. So what we have here with us, it's more than a what. I would guess that this is a who. And so the who we have with us here is one of the lead designers of the game, one of the major contributors of this game that we all love, to give his opinions about what the best and the worst of the game has been. And so I'd like to welcome Caleb Grace to the show. Caleb, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm just I'm over here puzzling if you did introduce me as a what, like what would I be?
What would you be? I have some ideas, but we won't go there. We can't go there again.
Yeah.
We don't want to break you again.
I know. Just so the audience knows, before we recorded, we got a little silly off air. So I'm still working out the giggles, but I think I'm getting there. I managed to get through the opening of the episode okay, but
You did good.
I did good. Thanks,
We're all
Ted.
proud.
Right. So, Caleb.
I'm so proud I could cry.
Yeah, I was laughing so hard I could cry. That was really what was going on. That was totally wild. So, but Caleb, before we get into some of these superlatives, why don't you just give us an update? We were trying to figure out off air before this came out, like, how long has it been since you've really been knee deep in Lord of the Rings, and what have you been doing since? And like, how are things going professionally, personally? What's going on? How are things going, buddy?
Oh, well, yeah, it has been a long time since I was actively doing design work for Lord of the Rings. I think it's been more than 2 years already, which is kind of amazing to think about. I kind of have to. I'm horrible at remembering the passage of time. Like, honestly, feels like just yesterday that I was working on the saga expansions. Like that's how near and dear it is to my heart. So to realize that that was actually like all the way back in 2012 that I started working on like
Oh my gosh, yeah.
the Black Riders. That just kind of blows my mind. Um, so yeah, I've been working on Marvel Champions, having a great time with that. I think we're building a really great community around that game, and working with Boggs and doing design for that has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I think I've been doing that for a couple of years now, so it's been at least that long since I was working on the Lord of the Rings.
You're kind of like the Mark Hamill of the Lord of the Rings. You're kind of Luke Skywalker forever.
Oh man,
You're just
that's
gonna
a
keep
really
getting.
big compliment. Like, I don't think you realize what a big compliment is. Like, I'll take a comparison to Mark Hamill any day.
Right? Yeah, I get. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
The question is, Ted, do you know exactly the weight of that compliment that you just gave to Caleb? Not that Caleb isn't deserving of it, but are you a big Star Wars universe fan?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you've been busy. I remember the last year, like you were trying to launch Marvel, but you were also finishing up some Lord of the Rings design work, and it was like doing 2 games and trying to keep everything straight. Probably was like
That was
just killer.
nuts. That was something that I hope to never have to do again. So right now it's just Marvel, and that feels great. We the early part of that game really was like laying track for an oncoming train. I think I've said that several times in a few other places. But that's like the best example. It was just we had a deadline that was approaching, and we had a lot of work to get done. And Nate French, Michael Boggs, and myself, we really kind of came together as a team, did a little bit of divide and conquer, each taking charge of a different element and putting it all together. And that kind of chased us through like the first year of the game's development, even after the launch of the core set. There was just we really want to hit the ground running with like that product release schedule. But since then, the management and our producer Molly and everyone involved with the game line has we've really learned from that first year, and kind of come up with a really good schedule now where things feel a lot more relaxed. It's really good, so that we have a little more time to experiment, try different ideas, and it doesn't always feel like you just got to take that first idea that you like and just make it work, because there isn't necessarily time to try something else.
Right.
So you've got time to breathe.
Yeah. It's been great. I really cherish the opportunity to work on the Marvel license, because after Lord of the Rings, like, Marvel really is probably my other favorite thing. You know what I mean? Like, Lord of the Rings was my first love. Discovering The Hobbit as a kid is forever near and dear to my heart. But I found comics like in middle school, and then just got really into those. And so I just feel like twice blessed. You know what I mean? To get to play in both these playgrounds.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Do you think, some people with the pandemic, like the pandemic has obviously taken its toll on a lot of people and things like that. But I'm curious if the pandemic, because some things at FFG were like pushed off and dates were pushed off, if that helped you even like get the ground, help gain ground a little bit on like release schedules and thing like that, or if that really didn't play a role in what's.
There was probably at some point, I feel like there was a push to extend a deadline just based on the fact that we knew some products were moving their release schedule. But typically, as a studio, we like to use that time to get ahead rather than extend what we're doing. Try to use that time to get ahead,
right.
or maybe catch up. If you're a Marvel player, then you probably know that the rules reference needs to be updated, and we're still trying to find time to do that. So right. I don't want to like miscast like what my schedule is now, because I'm certainly not sitting around with a ton of free time on my hands. It's
right.
it's less of a mad dash.
right. And it's I know you well enough now. I mean, I didn't know you hardly at all when we first did this, but now I feel like we're friends, so I know that
Yeah,
you're,
I mean,
you're,
I remember
you're
the first time I picked you up from the airport, you were a little nervous about like if I was taking you to my house or if I was taking you somewhere to drop off your body.
right. Yeah, right.
We've come a long way from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Seriously, I don't know if you guys know that, but I took a wrong turn on the way back out of the airport. It was dark because I picked him up at night, and I don't know if there was road construction or what, but I missed a turn. I end up on this like back road, and Dave's seriously looking at like, so is this where you leave my body or like?
That was really funny because I was flying in for a conference that I was doing, and Caleb's like, "Let me pick you up at the airport," and Caleb was gracious enough, and Caleb and I only met each other for a little bit at Con of the Rings, and Caleb, as always, you were, super, so that Midwestern charm and graciousness that you have. You picked me up from the airport, but I couldn't, that turn, just, I was like,
I didn't think you were
we
in,
really ended up on this dark stretch of road. There was like no street lights or anything. It really did look like the middle of nowhere.
I thought we were in the cities, but this
Yeah.
rural Minnesota.
Like, where are you taking me?
yeah, it's the land of 10,000 lakes.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, I heard you really don't like Brock Iron Fist.
Right.
And,
Right. That's Grant. That was all Grant. You need to get on to, when Grant flies over, pick him up from the airport, do whatever you need to do. But Brock is my fave. But I hope that through the pandemic that you and FFG and your family and your friends have all been, staying safe and staying healthy.
Yeah, I
and staying
appreciate
good.
that. We've been taking the shelter in place thing very seriously, as both just my family and the studio. FFG sent everybody home like in March, like well ahead of any governor's orders or anything like that. It was just like, you know what, this doesn't seem safe. Like, let's get everybody at home and spaced out where, we're not worried about transmitting anything to each other. And I actually, because I didn't have internet at home at that time, I was the only person going to the office at that time, which was kind of nice. I had the whole place like to myself, But eventually, then there was the governor's order of like, yeah, you just cannot go to the workplace. And so got internet in the house for the first time in like forever. And I've been working from home ever since. And it's actually been, it's been pretty good, like especially compared to the hardships that so many other people are facing right now. Like, I don't complain because we've got it pretty good. The commute is really nice. I kind of like roll out of bed and into my chair and, I miss the camaraderie of being at the studio, in the LCG department. Like, I miss that, but we still get on, our internet chat groups and chat with each other sometimes. So yeah, I really can't complain. Given what everyone else is facing right now, like, I just feel very, very fortunate that I've been able to work right and stay safe, and my family is healthy, and so we're in good shape. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are all doing well too. I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping in touch over the last.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been like 9 months already.
I know.
Yeah, Nelly.
I've been locked down since March, so it's approaching a year. Well, by the time this episode releases, it's going to be a year that we've been.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. It's amazing to think.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So it's good for reflection. And speaking of reflection, I wanted to bring this up. So I'm holding in my hand the Hunt for the Dreadnought, right? This was the last product that has been available, and the reason why, the community is like, I don't know. It's the end of, it's what we in the community are looking at as kind of the end for now, right? And so we look at the Hunt for Dreadnought, and I just got my copy the other day, and I opened it up, and I saw on the credits page that there's a Grace in the credits, but it's not you. Maybe as a play tester. I'm not sure who that person, maybe a brother or something.
Yeah, it's my brother Josh.
Yeah. So, but you are nowhere on this, on the credits for this.
Yeah,
do you want
first
to
Lord of the
talk a
Rings
little bit
product,
about
and
it?
I don't know how many years that my name isn't on, at least as like additional development or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I know that you're a
because I was
Marvels guy,
a
but
Marvel.
yeah, but
Yeah.
what's the? Do you want to talk a little bit about the Hunt for the Dreadnought here?
Yeah, I mean that was intended to be our 2020 Gen Con scenario. You know, it's something that we look forward to doing every year. And when it came up on the schedule of like, okay, we gotta start working on this thing. As I mentioned just a minute ago, you know, the Marvel team was slammed. There was no room in my schedule for me to work on this at all. So you know, my manager and I were talking. You know, I suggested that Jeremy Zwern would probably be both interested and also very well, you know, qualified to design it. I don't know if I was the first to suggest it, or if that was our manager, or if Jeremy might have even volunteered at that point to say that he was interested,
Right.
uh, because he spent a long time playtester for Lord of the Rings, like just a huge help to the game line before he even worked at the company, and then he continued to volunteer his time after work, you know, to play test even after he was hired and working on his own game line, you know. So I was only involved at the vision step, you know, basically just a discussion between me and Jeremy and our manager of like, hey, what should this thing be about? And both Jeremy and MJ had been excited about the idea of like some kind of giant villain that like everybody has to fight against, right? Like a huge, massive multiplayer, a little bit inspired by like the blob that ate everything for Arkham Horror.
Okay.
Um, because that was like the first thing I think we'd made where it was like everybody at every table at Gen Con is fighting this one giant creature, right?
Right.
And
Yeah, that's like
it,
a new. That was a new, like, kind of innovative concept
it
to
was a
morph the game
fantastic
into that.
idea.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of history behind that even is that MJ had that idea when we were working on Lord of the Rings. He wanted to do a Lord of the Rings scenario like that. And kind of my hang up, because I'm such like a almost like literal person about themes sometimes. It's like, what would be an appropriate creature? Because it was always like we should fight some monster like a dragon or a Balrog or a Watcher or something. I'm like, yeah, but we've already faced like all of those things, and it wasn't like this giant
Another
thing that everybody,
Balrog, right?
you know.
Like,
So I was super excited for him when he brought it to Arkham, because it seemed to me like it fits so perfectly in Arkham. Like there's any number of creatures that fits that. You know, they have ancient, you know, beings, right?
Sure.
Like the elder ones or whatever they're
Mhm.
called. And then when it turned into the blob that ate everything, I was like, oh, that's even better. That's hilarious. So then, yeah, when this opportunity came up and Jay Z got involved, he was like, yeah, I really like that. I think we should do that for Lord of the Rings. And I was like, kind of again going, yeah, you know, we had that talk. We couldn't really think of anything that was appropriate. Um, but then through that conversation, it might, I think it was actually like a meeting of the minds, because I know Jay Z was also really excited about ships. He was like, I love the ships in the Dream Chaser cycle. I'd love to do ships again. And I think that's where like kind of the World War II historian in me was like, oh my gosh, what if it was like the Hunt for the Dreadnought? Like I'd just been reading another World War II history book of like, you know, it was this big deal that there was this big battleship out there somewhere and they had to find it, figure out how
Mhm.
to sink it, you know? And
right.
so it's like, what if we did that? Like I could imagine like, okay, what if if we're all sailing our own ships and we all have to find this giant monster Corsair ship out there? Like that could work. So once we landed on the theme, at that point I was pretty much hands off. And then it's all Jay-Z and the people that helped him play test and develop it.
It's funny because I'll give you this as the low hanging fruit because it is superlatives. But guess which cycle is the community's favorite cycle?
Well, given that we were just talking about ships, I would guess Dream Chaser.
Yeah, I have to take a minute to find it. I know that it's in here somewhere. Um, let's see.
See, I'm not surprised by that though, because that was MJ's swan song. You know, like he really he left it all like he left it all on that cycle. Like I grew up like doing ski racing and everything, or playing soccer, and so there was this expression of like you leave it all on the field or you leave it all in the trails. Like you know you when you're trying to do your best and win the game or win the race, like you don't leave anything. You cross the finish line and you collapse. You know, And that's kind of how MJ approached the Dream Chaser cycle. Like he knew that was going to be his last Lord of the Rings cycle, and then he was moving on to Arkham, and so he very much just like put it all into that cycle. It's just a fantastic cycle with so many cool, fun, creative ideas.
Yeah. I will actually say that the Dream Chaser cycle is on 130 responses. The Dream Chaser cycle was the second favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it was first.
Right. So guess what the first favorite cycle is?
Oh my gosh. I will just guess what I think is my favorite, and that's the Arid Mithrin cycle.
Yeah, I would have Arid Mithrin's up there for me, but that one's low on the list.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ted, what do you think? Okay, that's Grant. Grant says Dwardelf. Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, I think actually, well, I'm gonna go Angmar.
Angmar Awakens.
Yeah.
Dwardelf is.
These are all good answers.
Yeah, they're all cycles in the game. Yeah, so
we like to play this survey question. We like to treat it a little bit like Family Feud style, like survey
we'll
says.
We'll get into the Family Feud. It makes it fun to edit, but yeah. The Khazad-dûm cycle, 26.4% of the people, a little over a quarter of the people thought that was the favorite cycle, and then the Dream Chaser cycle was a close second at 24.8%. So like 26% to 25%. So that's good. And number 3, Ted, you were right there with number 3. The third most popular answer, Angmar Awakens. So Arid Mithrin is number 4 on the list. So cool. That's great. So that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, we brought you here to talk about the best and worst in the game, and it's always good to get the designer's perspective because you have a whole different perspective. We've talked to you enough on the show to know that you love the game and you came to the game based on being a player of the game and not a designer, but you've designed so many things and you gotten to the point where you don't even remember half the cards that you've designed because there's just so many things floating around in the head. So that's interesting. But and this is a question that I've had for you personally ever since we did last year's extravaganza month. Last year we did Couples February, and one of the things that we did on the show is we had the Tolkien Road podcast, and they are a couple that talk about Tolkien, and they love they're a married couple, and they do, and so I listened to them for insight on Tolkien and his Legendarium. But one of the things that they said was really interesting, and they've said, and this is documented in one of Tolkien's letters, they said the Lord of the Rings, that Tolkien said, and he's quoted as saying this, is that the Lord of the Rings is of course a fundamentally religious and Catholic work, unconsciously so at first, but consciously in the revision. And they went through examples about how the ring was destroyed on March 25th, which is a Catholic date related to Easter. I think it's called the Feast of the Annunciation or something like that. The walkers left Rivendell on Christmas. So he added these Catholic things. Of course, we all know that Tolkien wasn't a guy that loved strict allegory and things, but obviously he was influenced about things in life. But I've been dying since last year to really ask you, since Tolkien was kind of governed by his faith, I was wondering, and I know that you're a man of faith and you talk about faith publicly. So I was wondering, how has faith governed your own direction in your Tolkien creation, in the design of this game throughout the years? Because you were a designer of this game for 8 years or 7 years or however long it was. So, how has your faith governed the design of the game?
I just want to say, first of all, I take it as a pretty big compliment that being friends as we are, that you feel like you can look at my life and your assessment is that I'm, clearly a person of faith and that I'm, comfortable sharing that publicly, because that is obviously very important to me. Like I I don't try to hide that I'm a Christ follower at all. It's actually something that I feel is central to my life. Like, I feel that being a Christian or a Christ follower means that it should permeate, your faith should permeate every area of your life. So it's not something like that I just think about on Sundays when I go to church. You know, it's like, um, my faith comes with me to work. My faith is with me when I parent my children, or when I love my wife, or when I talk to my neighbors, or if I come on a podcast. Um, but at the same time, um, you know, if I'm invited to a podcast that's talking about card games, I'm not trying to do a little bait and switch where, like, yes, I'll come on your podcast, but then I'm going to talk about my faith. Or, you know, in the case of working on the Lord of the Rings, the card game, you know, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it is the studio that pays me to work on the game, and it is their game, right? It's not my game. It belongs to the studio that pays for the license, and I get to work on it as part of my job, you know. So for me, uh, my faith plays an important role in the way that I approach that job. You know, the word that comes to mind is integrity. Like, you know, Christ teaches us to do everything out of love, you know, and respect. And so I try to bring that to work through anything that I'm asked to do. I try to do it, you know, with integrity and with respect for that project and the goals of that project. And so in this case, you know, the goal of the Lord of the Rings, the card game, is to provide just the highest quality entertainment that we can. And so that's my focus when I work on the game. It's not to try to weave a subtle message in there or anything like that, right? Like, I love that I'm at a point in my career where I can be on a podcast, and you can ask me a question about my faith, and that I was able to get to a place like this without trying to make a point of it, right? That it's just you know, to hear you ask the question, to you it just felt like a natural question because of what you know about Tolkien and what you know about me. And I can't tell you how much it means to me to be thought of that way. You know. But unfortunately, you know, well, fortunately or unfortunately, there isn't like any kind of, you know, like, I don't pray before I design a card. You know, like, I don't I don't
Right.
I don't try to write stories that I feel like reflect, you know, Christian parables or anything like that. I really just try to do my job with the utmost respect and the utmost integrity for the property, for the people involved. And if it leads to an opportunity like this, where it feels like it's a proper context that I can talk about my faith on a more personal level, then I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, it's ultimately, it's ultimately, you know, like, it's a secular game, right? It's a secular company. We don't advocate, as a studio, we don't advocate up, down, left, right on any particular faith or absence of faith or anything like that, right?
Sure. And I think I
I
ask
think
I ask you just because, and I appreciate the honest responses, because I think that what you are relating to is what Tolkien relates to too when he talks about faith. Like, he was a deeply Catholic. He was raised by a Catholic mom, and his father figure was a Catholic priest, but he didn't write Lord of the Rings to be a to be an allegory of the Bible. And, you know, like C.S. Lewis, when he wrote the Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe, the Chronicles of Narnia, that's it. You know,
Yeah.
like, that was a distinct allegory, or can be argued that it was an allegory. But Lord of the Rings is not such. And so, like, he just weaved his or was influenced by his religion. And it's interesting to hear how religious influences play a role in design of Lord of the Rings, the Legendarium, but also Lord of the Rings, the card game. You know, like, that's where the parallel came from me, and I was, like, very struck by that.
Yeah, if I was to say, you know, anything about my faith with relation to my career, it would be that I do strongly believe that I owe a great deal, um, you know, directly to Christ. You know, as someone who believes in Christ and believes in the gospel and his teachings. I believe that I owe my career to that, because this is a job, kind of like you mentioned earlier, that I wasn't looking for. I just kind of happened into it. And depending on your faith stance or your view against faith, you might say that I lucked into it. But for me, this is honestly one of the biggest ways that I see God at work in my life, is how I ended up where I ended up, and how I'm uniquely qualified for the job that I ended up with. Like, I just can't tell you how many times all these things from my past ended up becoming job assets that I never intended that way. I think you could look back at my life and draw a straight line from where I started as a child and my interests to where I am now, and it would feel like it all made sense. But of course, I didn't know any of that, ahead of time, right?
Surprise!
so
You're a game designer.
Yeah, that was your answer
Right.
when you were 8 years old. What do you want to be when you grow up? Game designer.
Right. No, that's what's so funny is it never entered my mind at any stage in my life to be a game designer. But looking back, I was always interested in game design. I was the kid in the neighborhood who came up with a new version of Kick the Can that was like way more involved. I was already adding Surge to games.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Caleb, how do you think?
And
How do you?
there's 2 cans?
Yeah, right. No, seriously.
Right. The can makes an extra kick after
My
this
Kick the
kick.
Can involves water guns and camouflage and like just all kinds of stuff, And then I was making my own board games, and I was collecting Marvel trading cards and looking at the stats on the back and trying to figure out how I could make a card game out of those stats. And like, so, when I look back, I go, boy, yeah, it all just kind of makes sense. Like, I was almost like meant to do this, but like I said, it was never something that I pursued. And so, if we're going to talk about faith, and I could just quote one verse, it would be, when Christ teaches disciples, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added to you, added unto you. So this idea of like, I wasn't trying to get this job. I wasn't trying to go and find like, what's the perfect job for me? Not that I wasn't looking for a job,
Right. Right. Sometimes.
But it was like my goal at the time. I was literally doing youth ministry at the time.
Right.
My goal at the time was to figure out how I could serve Christ with my life. And then it just ended up here. And it's been a really awesome ride since then. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity that I have and the people I work with. And I work with other Christians, and I work with atheists, and I work with all manner of wonderful people. And so it's just a real privilege.
Yeah. And it's really good to hear you say those things, because it just, to me, it's always, like I said earlier, it just struck a parallel that, because I knew you were a man of profess faith. Some people keep their faith private, and that's on them, but I know that you profess faith, and it's good to see it. I know that Tolkien professed faith, so the parallels there were just too good for me to not ask the question the next time you came on the podcast. So,
well, I'm going to leave this interview with a big head now, because I've been once compared to Mark Hamill and once brought up alongside Tolkien. So,
well, we're hoping to have you back next Thursday or next February. Yeah, right. But like, what do you think Jesus thinks of Surge? Like, come on, let's really get down to it. Like, that's really why I'm asking the question.
Those are the things I have
Christian
to
is
confess.
doomed. Come on, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How Christian can you really be with counter effects?
Yeah, right. Doomed is the least Jesus-y thing in the world. No, I'm just kidding.
No, think about it. It's to test your faith, test your resolve. Can you get through it?
Oh yeah, right. That's what everything is. It's a test of faith, right?
Look at Grant now quoting like straight out of the book of James, right? Like, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kind.
Sometimes I feel like I'm Job here at this, like in a lot of these things, like. Anyways,
oh my God.
I think we should get into some superlatives, since it is Superlative February, even though the show isn't going to be released until March, the first week of March. But we should talk about some superlatives for February. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk a little some easy things, Caleb. And so, just so everybody knows, I gave Caleb the option of looking up his answers, and he chose not to. So
he is elected to ignore them.
He's elected, right? And so, So
I do believe I explained because I haven't had time. And that was the honest answer, not a blow off. This
Yeah.
I know. I'm just
21 is off to a
Yeah.
pretty busy start.
Well, I mean, but when I ask you what's your favorite, designed enemy, and you give me Chieftain Uftak, and I know that you didn't even design that enemy, that's how I know that Anyways, but let's get into it. And we'll just go around the table. I think that's the best thing. Like, when you think of, because you are uniquely playing the encounter deck. People in the community are saying how you are the embodiment of the encounter deck when we play, and how we scream at Caleb when Surge hits or Doomed hits, and we're like, Caleb, all these things. So most of us only play the player deck, but you are also playing the encounter deck. So to get your perspective on this is good. So I'll let you start in terms of what is, and Ted, Grant, I will ask you too, but in terms of your favorite enemy that you designed, which one was that? Like, which ones do you remember being like, that was a good enemy?
I like the dragon in Fire in the Night.
Dagnir.
I like that a lot. Dagnir, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that just the whole vibe of that scenario and the way the dragon interacts, like attacking the town. It's kind of like Battle of Lake Town 2.0 a little bit, right? Where like we learned some things from Smog attacking Lake Town in that Gen Con scenario, and kind of revised it and added some new features for Fire in the Night.
Yeah. And there, you can definitely tell that you had some, what do I want to say, like some influences on some previous scenarios, so that's pretty good.
I was also just looking at the other dragon, Narlug, from the other Gen Con scenario.
Oh, Belagost.
The Ruins of Belagost,
Yep.
yeah. And I don't remember how I ended up looking at that recently, but I was just remembering how it's stalking you through the. Oh, someone wrote a review article. That's right. I was reading the review, and it just reminded me like that. I was pretty happy with how that came together. This impending sense of doom of like, well, we can't linger on this quest stage too long because that dragon's going to show up.
Right.
And that was kind of fun.
Yeah. What about you, Grant?
I like dragons.
What's your favorite enemy, if there is such a thing? My favorite enemy, the Dolgador orcs. They're easy to kill.
I've got to say it's probably some of the Urukai from the Road Dog, not the Road Dog, the Treason of Saruman box. So, like the Urukai fighter or the Soldier of Isengard,
Mm-hmm.
the toughness adds a whole new element to just taking out enemies.
Right. Okay, Ted, what's your enemy of choice?
Mine's kind of like a lot of my cards. I tend to fall towards the thematic side. Like what incites theme. And in the Hobbit box scenarios and Flies and Spider, there's the crazy Cobb and old Tom Noddy.
Old Tom Noddy, right?
And
Lazy Lob and all that.
And
all
not
that
like
from
anything
the poem,
like
right?
As far as enemies go, like doing mind blowing things, but they have this venom mechanic, and those are all like, like we're fond of those. Like we've seen the names appear in the Hobbit, but then like here is this like crazy Cobb, right? And he's gonna bite me and poison me, so like I gotta watch out.
Yeah.
They all just, it's fun to like, those names come off and they're just kind of like fun to say, like, oh, the crazy Cobb, he's gonna get you. He's gonna get you.
Yeah.
So it's good. It was cool to see those get sort of brought to life in the game.
Yeah.
That's such a cool answer. That's really exciting to hear.
And Caleb, I mean, wasn't that one of the first things? I guess that was the second Saga box. Your first product was the first Hobbit box, right? Wasn't that the first thing that you designed?
Well, yes
Kind
and
of.
no. A lot of the initial design work had already been done when I started. So it was my first project. And I designed all the player cards, but the initial scenario design had been done by a freelancer, I believe, Scott Weber, who came up with a lot of these really cool ideas for 3 unique scenarios. And then I just developed them, refined them. So actually, On the Doorstep was my first like solo project from start to finish.
Ah, that's cool. And since everybody asked, my favorite My favorite enemy is that city guard. I know that seems new, but the fact that his engagement cost keeps going down for every round or for every token, like that was just so unique, and he's such a pain in my butt that I just I feel like I have to give a little shout out for that. And then
that's awesome. That's similar to what I was saying about Narlug, this idea of impending doom, like you can see it coming.
I know.
Yeah, I'm really glad. It's cool to hear how different your answers are. And
right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What about like your favorite location design? This one to me is a little more vague. I don't have necessarily a favorite location because the locations to me, and I probably shouldn't say this to the designer of the game, but like the travel phase is like kind of vague and nebulous. And I know you've done things in the game to try to make it a little more exciting and, things like that. But like, and the artwork on locations are stunning. And sometimes the artwork overlaps on locations and you get like a panorama that's split up into 4 different cards and things like that. So those are fun to find. But I don't think I could tell you what the names of those fun locations are.
Sure.
But well,
you don't have to fight them. You don't interact with them.
It's harder. You're reading for the triggers and stuff. So, but was there a location? And that's my bias coming out. So I apologize for that. But I will say, was there a location that you were like, hey, this is pretty cool?
So actually, that it's funny because you would think that might be one that I go, oh, geez, I've designed so many and none of them stand out. But actually, that's one I'm very ready to answer because. Well, I've done a lot of these iconic locations, like the Lonely Mountain or the Gates of Minas Tirith, cool stuff like that. My favorite one is actually a village hut from the Sands of Harad.
Oh man.
Okay, I have to pull it up on a card.
It's a whole storytelling. I actually have it up here on Hall of Bayorn.
Yeah, you got to read it. I love it.
You've got a travel and a response, right? So it's just a 2/2, location. And it has, this response that after the players travel to Village Hut, the first player discards the top card of his deck. If that card is an ally, he puts it into play under his control, exhausted. So when you explore this, when you travel to it, you might find help. You might find that there was somebody there that you need to rescue inside that hut. And of course, it comes at a cost. So you have a travel cost to discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that card is an enemy, add it to the staging area. So I don't know. This was like in a scenario where you're trying to rescue people and there's orcs are overrun this village. And so I just love the idea, like the door and the art helps sell it too, right? Because here the door has been kicked in, right? And you're a little bit like, you don't know what's in there. It could be someone, it could be an enemy waiting to kill you. It could be both. It could be none. The possibilities. I got such a reaction from the playtesters. They just loved this thing. And it was one of those I go, I wish I had thought of this so much earlier and done it like in every set.
Done something similar in every set. Huh?
Yeah, it was just so much fun. I'm pretty sure I copied an effect like this for the custom scenario kits. I really wanted to bring that sense of fun and uncertainty to those custom scenario kits.
Right.
I'm trying to remember. I think it's like a abandoned village or something in Mirkwood.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, it is a response, so you don't have to trigger it if you don't want to get the ally.
That's true, but why wouldn't you?
I know. Well, I never said I was a very good player. And what about treachery? What about treacheries? Is there a treachery that stands out in your design?
Oh my gosh, that is a harder one. A favorite treachery. That is.
I mean, there's some really popular ones. Like people talk about, some of the more tragic ones, like Sleeping Sentry, which wasn't your design. That was before you joined. And Necromancer's Reach is iconic from the core set and things like that.
Yeah.
People remember what hurt them the most, If
I was just going to say
what stuck the knife in your gut.
Right.
Yeah, the treacheries that people remember are the ones where they like just about flip the table, right? With like, we were doing great, and then that one treachery,
Right. Savage South comes out, which is
Yeah, Savage South is kind of a fun. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it is memorable at least. What's interesting is that one, I didn't really think that much of it. I thought it was kind of a neat effect, but maybe it's because the kind of decks that I build and play weren't very impacted by it. But once that set got released, that's like the only card I heard people talking about for a long time. It's like Savage South. What in the world is that?
Right. So just so everybody knows, Savage South is when revealed, the player discards his top 5 cards of his deck. Each player discards each card he controls that shares a title with any of the 5 cards he just discards. So it's just a way to, like, you know, if you have out your 2 Wardens of Healing and the third one gets discarded, now you don't have any Wardens of Healing that you get to... It's just...
Yeah, see, I don't even really like running 3-ofs a whole lot. So that's one of those things. I didn't think it was that bad because I mostly don't run 3 copies of cards.
See, and who says you're a good player either, right?
My win-loss record.
Yeah. Well, how about you? Hey, that's a little bravado there. But Grant, what's one of your favorite? I'll put favorites in quotes because we may not have a favorite treachery, but do you have a favorite treachery?
Well, for favorite location, I've got Hennethanoon from the Journey to the Crossroads. As for favorite treachery, probably Sudden Assault. That can wreck your day.
Right.
Hennethanoon from the Journey. I forget what that one is.
Hennethanoon is the unique location. While Hennethanoon is the active location, skip both the encounter phase and the combat phase, and ignore the forced effects on stage 1B and the Black Gate.
Mm.
And it's got a lovely bit of artwork as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Ted, what's your feedback on treachery or location?
All terrible. They're all designed terribly.
Yeah,
every single treachery that goes.
I actually removed them from the deck.
Terrible.
I play easy mode and then I get rid of all that.
I just realized my favorite treachery.
Oh.
I had to kind of scroll through treacheries a little bit to remember. But it's kind of a 2-part answer because it was inspired by the Power of Mordor, which that was a card Lucas and I came up with kind of together that we both just thought was like super fun. But of course, we also came up with it like right at the end of development and didn't really get to play test it as much as we should have because it created a whole bunch of rules questions, you know?
Right.
But for people who don't remember, the Power of Mordor was like discard every encounter card in play and then reveal that many encounter cards, right?
Oh,
so
if you have,
discard them and then reveal 5 cards. And it's just kind of this hilarious moment. So we did, we sort of copied that effect into the, again, the custom scenario kits, which I'm beginning to suspect I'm going to keep pointing to those a lot because I'm really proud of custom scenario kits. But I don't remember the name of the treachery, though. That's what I was looking for. But we basically redid that effect and just did it a little cleaner so that, when you're playing versus mode, right, with these custom scenario kits, so it's me versus you, and you are playing the scenario that I built, and you reveal this treachery, which I think I can't remember if it's Massing at Night or if it's something else, but basically it says to you that your opponent gets to choose any number of non-unique like enemies or locations in play and discard them. And so that's me. I have this opportunity on your turn to say, you know what, that bat's not really doing anything to you. He can go, oh, that little 2/2 location out there, that's not doing anything to you. That can go. So I can discard any number of these cards that I want and then make you reveal that many more cards.
Right.
And I had so much fun with that strategy when I was playing these versus games. Like my whole deck was kind of built around that moment of like, when you advance to stage 2 and I get to search the top of my deck for like a treachery and reveal it and you can't cancel it. I hope to find this one.
Right. That's the one, right? Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I want to find the name of it, but yeah, that's the design. Cause I just thought that was such a fun, impactful moment. And especially in versus mode, where you, instead of just having this simulated AI, you actually have a player making a choice.
Right. And I mean, the other low-hanging fruit in terms of favorites is what was your favorite quest to design and then maybe even favorite quest to play?
Oh boy,
because those may be two separate questions, right? Like,
yeah, I will absolutely answer that. The favorite quest to play again, because I was just talking about it. As the designer of the game, I've had the absolute most fun playing the custom scenario kits because it is the only way that I get to play where I'm not intimately familiar with the contents of the encounter deck.
right.
It's the only way that I can truly be surprised, because
Right.
even if I know the cards, I don't know which ones that you've put into the deck for me.
Right.
So I probably like that format more than anybody else in the world. Because
right.
Everybody else kind of already gets that experience all the time, but this is new for me.
99% of the players play this game because it's cooperative. The designer plays it because it's competitive.
Well, it's still
but
cooperative though when you do the 2v2. Which,
I know. Right.
So when I got invited to go to the Lure of Middle Earth, I spent probably the majority of my time playing 2v2 games because it was just so much fun. It was a great way to meet people and to get to play with them. And it just seemed like everybody was having a great time doing that. So I am really proud of how those turned out. I had a lot of help with those too. I had a great team helping me come up with different effects and refine them. So that's my most favorite to play. The one that I'm most proud of designing, that is a tough one. I think if you want to ask the other guys what their favorites are, I'll take a second to think about that.
Okay, Grant, what was your favorite quest to design? Caleb said I had to ask you.
Grant's working on a quest where Aragorn has lost a particular item of clothing.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. Is there, Grant, is there a quest that you love to play?
Some of the nightmare quests actually. Nightmare Journey Along the Anduin, and yeah, it just adds a new makes some of the older quests more viable to play at a higher, more difficult level.
Yeah, Nightmare quests are good. Journey Along the Anduin Nightmare is pretty good. I enjoy that. I played just recently. I played Nightmare. What's the first in the Angmar Awakens? Chetwood. I played Nightmare Chetwood, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What about you, Ted? What's your favorite go-to quest?
Oh, some of the well, you mentioned Journey Down the Anduin a lot. I think it's
Are you going to say Journey Up the Anduin?
Well, I was thinking it's kind of a tie between that. I think I like actually the Mirkwood one more. Like we're
Lost in Mirkwood.
Lost in Mirkwood.
Yeah, that's the one that's
such a.
Sorry, I don't mean to
interrupt. That's the one where you have like the different branching paths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that scenario, right. You can go. There's like orcs or spiders, or there's like this or that, and it has a lot of different combinations. You don't know which way you're going to go every time you play it. It's got a high replayability because of that. I think more so than like any other scenario. Because the path will always be different, like each time almost.
And I also feel like that scenario best reflects the Hobbit when they're in Mirkwood and they're doing like the fire goes out and they have to go to a different place, and like to me that scenario is that part of the book, even though it's not like I want to put it in the Hobbit saga because I love that. Like I feel like it goes there. So
yeah, it's very, and then all the quests around Mirkwood, that's very like that's quintessential Middle Earth, right? Like that's just like that's Mirkwood. I'm dealing with spiders and dark places and all that kind of stuff. So it brings you like right to that sort of thematic setting.
Yeah. Well,
how about yourself there, David? Well, I guess you said Anduin, right?
We're gonna go back to Caleb here now that I can't give him.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I knew when you asked me what was my favorite design, it was definitely going to be one of the saga quests.
Sure.
Just because that was easily the most fun I had designing quests. I'm just really proud of the saga expansions, and so it's actually a bit of a toss up. But I would probably say the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, just for how it tied everything together. Like I was so proud of how we were able to plant the seeds of that scenario in the previous box. Even, you know, when you play Journey to the Crossroads, right, and there's the Hadram that are marching to the gate, and if you don't defeat them, you got to write them down, and we don't even tell you in that box. Like when you play through that box, you have no idea why you're writing these down.
Right.
And then you get to the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. You advance to that stage where the reinforcements show up, and it's like, okay, go look at all the Haradrim you wrote down, and they just showed up to fight you at Minas Tirith because you didn't defeat them earlier. And then you have Aragorn's arrival is delayed by the number of rounds that it took you to defeat, you know, the Battle of Pelargir in the Siege of Gondor. So I was really proud of how we were able to pull all these elements together, because I think that's why you play campaign mode, right? Is to have those moments. And I love the horns. That moment in this scenario where Rohan shows up. You've just been hammered by the Witch King and his orcs, and you have this reprieve, this moment of, we can ride out and quest real hard and try to just clear the staging area if we make enough progress. And the feedback I got on that was really good. I'm still proud of that one. The close runner up though was the final two, the Black Gate Opens and Mount Doom.
Mount Doom, yeah. Because
that was like a check that I wrote at the start of the process in 2012 that I had to cash when I got there, you know, like 4 years later, however long it was, you know, because it was in the vision document from the beginning that this would be 2 quests that you can play independently, or if you're playing multiplayer, you could play them side by side, and they would impact each other. And I do remember that meeting. I was at like an executive meeting where we were talking about this, and I told them that was the plan, and they kind of looked at me like, if you can pull that off, that will be amazing, you know. Right. And I was like, cool. And I had no idea how I was going to do it at that time. And then we did the epic multiplayer quest for Gen Con, and I was like, hey, that's it. That works. And so
there it is, right?
A lot of positive feedback to that too. And so really proud of both of those. Well, I guess 3 quests in total, because of how they pulled everything together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, those are some phenomenal. I don't think that there's any quest that you can really go wrong with, except for maybe, you know, those couple of quests that Nate designed that nobody likes. You know which ones I'm talking about. Which ones were they, Caleb? Please describe in detail which.
Nate has heard these comments. You know, these things circulate back to him, and I know, because when I invited the guys in the LCG team to help me design the scenarios for the final cycle, I told Nate, I said, I'd really like you to help me design, you know, the last scenario of the last cycle as a way to bring it full circle. And I remember he said, well, let's just be careful we don't make it too location heavy, because no one likes that one.
Emin Muil, the Hills of Emin Muil.
And I actually took that opportunity to tell him, look, I get why people don't, that's not their favorite one, or they don't like it as much. I said, but I have to tell you, you know, I came to the game like you said, as a fan. I was playing that scenario before I worked at the company, and I played it and I went, yeah, that's cool. It's not I don't like it as much as Conflict at the Karak or, you know, Return to Mirkwood. However, I thought it was brilliant for what it was showing.
Oh, yeah.
In that first cycle, you got 6 different adventures, and all 6 of them had totally different focus, right?
They're very distinct. I remember.
And what I said to Nate specifically was that people are judging that quest now, however many years later, based on what's come out since then, you know? And the thing is, we've had all these years to learn what a cooperative, story-driven game is and can be. Whereas that first cycle, Nate was not only designing scenarios, but he was forging a path, blazing a trail. Right. There was nothing else like it before. And so I thought it was great how in that first cycle you got a quest that focused on enemies, focused on locations. You had one that introduced, you know, different like objectives and counters and all this stuff that I was like, man, this game has potential, you know. And that's why I thought it was brilliant, that it just showed not every scenario is just going to be an equal measure of exploring and fighting. There's going to be some focused more on exploring, some focused more on fighting, and we definitely learned lessons from it. But kudos to him for going there in the first place, you know.
Yeah, and I
lessons.
I do say that tongue in cheek, because some of my most favorite quests are the beginning. I mean, Journey Along the Anduin to me is such an iconic quest for this game because because it's such a the boss enemy and the very first thing that you put that's crazy. Like that is crazy. And then, and everybody goes through it because you buy it in the course, you get it in the core set, and everybody has that experience. Not everybody has to buy Conflict at the Carrack, but everybody goes through Journey Along the Anduin. And so for that to be, and so kudos to Nate. And I say that tongue in cheek just because, you're the one on the show, not Nate. So when if Nate ever wants to come on the show, if Nate ever wants to come on the show, we'll have him.
I like to find opportunities to give praise to the other guys that worked on the game, especially Nate for kicking it off in the first place. Like I literally wouldn't have had a job without the idea he had to create this game.
I mean, just for my 2 cents, I actually like the Hills of Emmonweal. Maybe not the fact that it was so location heavy, but the fact that he brought in so many different locations that were unique to Middle Earth. Obviously, you've got Ammon Hen and Ammon Law. You've got the East Wall of Rohan, the Falls of Rauros. He's put them all in there, and they're all pinpoints of the map of Middle Earth. So for that side of things alone, I think it's a brilliant quest. I think Nightmare made it better, took out some of the deck bloat with the heavier locations, and made it a little bit more challenging. But I think overall it was a good quest, but it just needed a little bit more refinement.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair. I don't mind him at Hills of Emmonweal. I like that one. And he designed the Khazad-dûm cycle, the Dwardelf cycle. So I mean, so that's
no, that was Lucas.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's kind of amazing to think that Nate launched this amazing game and he only did the core set the first cycle, and then he was on to the next thing.
Right. It's crazy. Well, let's keep going here. Some of these are a little more rapid fire questions, so hopefully we can, not that you can't think about them, but maybe we want to get through them a little more. And these come from one of our patrons.
It's a very polite way of saying I take too long. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, the stories are fine, but Caleb, come on, let's get going. No, but I did send a message out to the patrons, and I asked them, "Hey guys, do you have any superlatives that you want, or things that you want to ask Caleb about Superlative February?" And I did get some responses back. So they're worthy of questions. So here we go. You ready? Okay. So. Messenger of the King. In the community, we abbreviate that Motk. It's the contract that makes a unique ally that belongs to a sphere. A hero. What is your favorite target for Motk?
I didn't play that one very much, in truth. I'm trying to think of who I even tried. That was out of all the contracts, that was one that I really kind of handed to my testers and said, "Here, break this." Okay. And that's how we ended up with the ready effect is limit once per phase or something, or per round even. I can't remember what the limit is, because someone just chose Faramir and was just readying Faramir.
Right. 17 readies
and willpower.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of what did I even play? I probably got so much playtester feedback that I didn't actually build a Messenger of the King deck myself.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that the Messenger of the King contract is trash and we shouldn't ever play it. Okay, good. There you go. You heard it here first on Card Talk, folks. Ted,
I'm really trying to rack. Oh, you know what?
Go ahead.
I bet I did. The one thing I know that I talked about, at least if I didn't do it, I talked about was making a Haradrim deck, starting out with Ferial as a hero, because who doesn't want to be able to filter the encounter deck from turn one with 3 willpower? Yeah.
Right. Ted, who's your favorite Motk hero?
Well, Caleb just mentioned Faramir, and I remember cracking open the core set from the game, and one of my first thoughts was okay, they're gonna make more heroes, right? You know, like this is gonna be part of the game, and like Faramir, he's hero material.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he not a hero? And we got some versions of him which are great to have, but then it circled back around where that original version like can become a hero, so kind of made that be full circle. I was like, he is now.
He is.
Yeah, and he's good even with the limit on reading.
Even with the limit, yeah, it's
Still
wonderful.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue with the contract question. Don't worry, Grant. We'll get you on the next one here. It says, "What's your favorite Grey Wanderer 1-cost card, except for Strider? You can't pull Strider.
Except for Strider.
Yeah, I mean Strider's
yeah,
like the auto include. So like if it's not Strider, what are you pulling out for your Grey Wanderer?
Sure. Then I'm probably going with Gandalf hero, and it's going to be the Wizard Pipe.
Wizard Pipe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Grant. Do you play Grey Wanderer, Grant?
I've played Grey Wanderer. If it's not Strider, then if I'm running tactics, War Axe.
Okay, so you got that going on. Okay. Caleb, what is your least and favorite phase of the game?
My least favorite phase of the game?
Your favorite and least favorite phase of the game.
Oh. Well, as the designer, my favorite is obviously the quest phase. I love seeing those encounter cards come up.
Right.
And least favorite, I don't know. I don't know that I have a least favorite.
Like you know how that awesome refresh phase is always so exciting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like maybe the refresh because I just don't want it to end.
Right. What about this? What's your least favorite card because it's too powerful? Now, can I guess before I'm gonna write it down, and then
sure.
And then before you say it, and I'm gonna write it on this piece of paper.
My least favorite card because it's too good.
It's right.
Yeah, or maybe a card you wish could have, could be you wish you could tweak if you could go back and maybe do it again.
This is one of those cards that I think I know what
It's interesting.
Like what your answer is, because I think you've answered this before, but
yeah, it's least favorite card because it's just too good. I'd probably say Vilya.
Oh, I was thinking this one. Test
of Will. Yeah, I think Test of Will. If we were to make it now, it'd definitely be like 2-cost, right? It would probably just cancel the when revealed on a treachery, try to limit it somehow.
Right.
But we found so many different ways to kind of just design around it. And also as a player, I have to confess, it feels good when I'm playing to be able to cancel that treachery. You know what I mean?
To cancel yourself?
To just say to the encounter deck, no.
Yeah, right. Well, we are living in the cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what everybody's saying? Now, do you sleeve your cards?
It's a cool card. I'm not trying to hate on Vilya. It's just that so much of card design is about cost to benefit. If a card is this good, you have to pay this much for it, and of course, Vilya just breaks that entirely. And the fact that it's repeatable just makes it that scarier. You can just do it again and again and again.
Right, and I mean, I think everybody in the community knows about Chris Stanford and the one deck, and it's like it's a Vilya deck because Vilya is so powerful. It's just
it definitely feels like a Ring of Power though, right? When you're playing it, if something's gonna impact the game, it's at least an appropriate card thematically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just, I guess what's interesting is like you look at the restrictions of what it takes to play it. It's unique. You can only have one in play. It has to be attached to Elrond. Yep. But the fact of the matter is, like,
a super good hero anyway.
none of these things are really bad. Like, if you had to raise your threat to do it, that in my mind would be a more exciting card, because and it would thematically it'd be appropriate. They didn't just go hog wild with those rings once Sauron was back, because they knew there were consequences, right? So that to me would have been interesting if you had to like do some kind of threat raise or something every time you wanted to use that ring. Then suddenly you have a consideration.
I'm not saying anything, but the final FAQ and hidden errata have been managing their way into this community. Maybe there's one left somewhere that haven't been discovered.
No, I don't
kidding.
think the card, clearly not everyone plays Elrond Villia decks. It's not like that's all you see when you see people playing the game.
Well, it's really funny. We had a patron on the show, Russ, who generous patron Russ, thank you for being awesome. And he was talking about Elrond. He hosted a show and his card he chose was Elrond, and I said, well, do you run it with Villia? And he was like, what's Villia? So it's obviously a card that not everybody uses or runs, or not everybody's into that sort of thing. So yeah, you're right. You're a side quest guy, so what's your favorite side quest?
The storm comes, so you get the resource smoothing on the first ally you play each round.
Is that?
That's a neutral one. It's in the Harad cycle.
Yeah. Is that if you're playing with? Ted, help me out. Are you playing with Thor? Like how many do you have? Thurindir, Thaurdir, and Thranduil. Like
in true token style, several characters with the same name.
Right. It's like
yeah. So actually, that reminds me, Dave. We talked forever ago about the contracts, and you were asking me about my favorite, and I was telling you, well, it's in the last pack. Right. Like at the time, like we didn't even know what it was. And yeah, I love the Storm Comes is connected to I always want to call it like the Four Friends, because that was its playtest title.
Bond of Friendship.
Right.
Bond of Friendship, yeah. Because I built just a bonkers Bond of Friendship deck that was just so much fun to play. I don't think I've taken it apart yet. It was Spirit Glorfindel, Leadership Denethor, Tactics Eowyn, and then Thurindir for lore. So it had like a starting threat of like 25 or 27 or something ridiculously low.
And you can destroy an enemy in the first round because of Tactics Eowyn, right? Like
yeah, if I need to. And then with Thurindir, I go and I grab the Storm Comes. So turn one, we're going after the Storm Comes, and for the rest of the game, the first ally that I play is basically neutral. And I already have 4 heroes in place. So now I'm just running all my favorite 4-cost allies and just throw. So I've got, you got, I think Leadership Gimli is one of my favorites to play. You also have Tactics Legolas, just all these guys that are normally just a little bit on the steep end that you're like, oh, gee, I'm going to have to wait a turn, or how many of these guys can I really put in my deck? My deck's just full of them,
Right, because you can pull out the Storm Comes
fun.
Reliably. Yeah, that's really good. So Caleb, what do you think the community's favorite side quest is going to be?
Oh man, for me it's a toss up between like gather information or double back. Like, do people like reducing their threat more, or do people like going and getting a card? I'll say gather information. They want to go get a card.
I like double back because it's a ZZ Top song and I can sing it when I play it.
Is that right? I didn't know that. I have a ZZ Top song on my playlist. Like for my work day, I listen to YouTube, and I have this. I just keep adding to that playlist. It's over like 500 songs now or something ridiculous. But I got Sharp Dressed Man on there because that one's always fun.
Man, it's a song from Back to the Future 3.
Double back.
Everyone's crazy about a sharp dressed man. Oh wait, no. That's Sharp Dressed Man. So it appears, as I'm looking at the results, it appears that gather information is the odds-on favorite for side quests. Like, significantly so, it looks like. Gather information is the...
I suppose it's people's favorite card to go because it gets their favorite card.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Yeah, it looks like there is 58 out of 130 people, so over half the people like gather information more than anything. So, but what was yours, Kale? What did you say yours was? The Storm.
My favorite, the Storm Comes. That's the other neutral one,
right?
Yeah, I just had, like I said, I just had so much fun, spamming all my favorite allies with it in my Bond of Friendship deck.
Right. something that I need to think about, because I love Bond of Friendship playing hobbits, so that's just one of my things. So is your favorite, now that all the contracts have been released, is your favorite contract the Bond of Friendship or Perilous Voyage?
Perilous Voyage is fun. The thing is, I have like fond memories of all of them, except for, like I said, Messenger of the King. I think I just ran out of time to play test everything, and that one was getting so much attention. Like that was one where MJ and I, we both just knew, like, okay, everyone's already going to love this. All we have to do is make sure it's not broken, you know. And we had testers who were all over that. But I built decks for all of the others. And I think the most fun that I had was playing with the Bond of Friendship because of that deck that I came up with. It was just so much fun to play.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, like, it's not like a far and away like my favorite. I had a lot of fun too playing with the Highlander one, which is one I think people don't talk about as much, but the Council of the Wise. I actually really enjoyed.
I love that you call it the Highlander one. For those people who don't know the Highlander, I assume you mean the movie where he's like, there can be only one, right? Like that's that's so great, right?
There can be only one.
Sean Connery, the Spaniard, right? Isn't that what?
Yeah, that's a term that's used a lot in card games where the idea of you can only have one copy of a card. I think that shows up in just about every card game in some form or another, some kind of deck restriction with some kind of payoff. And that one just cracked me up. Makes you dig into your card pool a little deeper,
right?
Play with cards you wouldn't normally use, and that's always fun.
Yeah. Let me ask you a couple other questions here from some patrons. Joe, one of our new patrons. Joe is I don't want to say he's new to the game, but he's really deep in the community now. He's been on the show a time. We talked about Raise the Shire with Joe, and he said, is there one hero, now that you look back, that you wish you could have included in the game? He doesn't give any like qualifications, like because of lore or because you felt but is there a hero that you wish you would have included in the game?
So I don't know, like, I was really careful, especially when mapping out the saga boxes, to like include like all my favorites or everyone that I thought like absolutely needed to be in the game. I know that there are fans out there who still wish we had like a Bergol hero, the son of Baragon.
Yeah, Bergol. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
There was definitely boxes that we didn't check for some people, which is unfortunate, right? We were never going to be able to check all of them. But as far as I'm concerned, like I got all the heroes that I definitely wanted to see. But I will say that I kind of kicked myself a little bit when Journeys of Middle Earth released, the board game, for those who don't know, the FFG board game. They have a dwarf hero in there, and I'm struggling to even get the name right.
Her name is Dis, right? D-I-S.
Dis. That's
Dis?
exactly it.
I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Dis or Dis. But yeah, it's like the mother of like Feely and Keely,
right?
I think.
Well, I'm not sure. That's for Grant.
I was kind of kicking myself, but I was like, oh my gosh, there was a female dwarf character that we could have put in the game that was accurate to the lore, and it never occurred to me.
Right.
And I think it's probably because in truth, I'm not sure if she is still present in the timeline of our game, which I think people forget that there actually is a set timeline for Lord of the Rings game, because we broke it with the saga expansions. That was a deliberate choice. So we broke our own timeline, but ultimately the regular cycles, they all take place in that 17-year window. So I don't know if Dis is technically still alive during that time, but we also don't know that for sure that she's dead. So I kind of wish that I had seen the opportunity. So hats off to the Journeys in Middle Earth team for thinking of something that even I didn't think of.
It's actually not stated whether or not she died after they were exiled from the Lonely Mountain. There's just
yeah, it's left open ended, and so I just thought, boy, that was such a cool idea, because that it probably one of the biggest challenges working with the Lord of the Rings story is that while there are amazing, iconic, fantastic female characters like Galadriel, Eowyn, and Arwen, and so on, they're far outnumbered by the number of guys, right? But we are in the 21st century where we're trying to appeal to a broader audience, and it really does make a difference if you're a girl who wants to get into the game to have girl characters to play, so I wish I had thought of that. I think that was a cool one.
So now the question that leads into that, and Joe, thank you so much for the question. The follow-up question is, if you would have included this hero, which hero would have gotten kicked out of the card pool because of that?
I don't know for sure which one, but I definitely would have cut one of the invented characters.
Okay, like
I feel like we always invented characters where we couldn't find a character in the lore who filled that niche,
like a Corsair character, like Nas.
Well, I can't cut Nasia because then MJ would be really upset.
Yeah, I mean that was MJ's favorite design. He said that, but but those sorts of characters. Yeah. Thalon was a created character. Eleanor.
Well, you can't cut Thalon, or Nate can't have his mono Thalon deck that beats everything on turn one.
Right.
Yeah, there was some characters. We had a lot of elves. We probably could have cut one of those.
Merland. You could have gotten rid of Merland. That's nobody likes her.
I feel like no. Yeah, you're probably right. Probably no one would miss Merland if we cut her.
Ted would miss Merland.
To be fair, she does work in a mono lore deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's really funny how just to talk about Merland is how it kind of circled back around to, she sort of got a reference. She's a fictional character in the game, but then when the Hobbit movies came out, the Peter Jackson movies, they added that elf character who was also like made up for the movie, Toriel. Mm-hmm. And so they just sort of became like synonymous with each other.
Oh, funny.
That was just really funny. Yeah,
Toriel Merland, right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, and nobody likes either, apparently.
Yeah, right.
For completely different reasons. Caleb's never coming back on the show now because he's like, Merland was my favorite character to design and stuff.
No, she wasn't.
Okay, yeah.
See, that was actually Merland, Spirit Pippin, Tactics Theoden. These are characters that I think they have their fans, but I don't think they're as well loved as other
heroes.
Who's
a fan of Spirit Pippin?
Well,
name one person who's a fan of Spirit Pippin.
I don't want to call anyone out,
Okay.
But basically it was just that that was the cycle against the shadow where we had a whole lot of turnover in terms of like who was doing lead now. It was like it was Lucas and then it was me. But Lucas was working on Netrunner and the project got extended, but there was this had to be this quick turnaround. So basically we ended up putting out some heroes that were meant to play into the theme of the cycle, which they do, but there just wasn't enough time to develop them to get that feedback of like, hey, threat reduction is kind of cool, but like it's not enough. Or like Theoden giving plus willpower is kind of cool, but it fails by comparison to some other heroes. It's like,
right.
So yeah, you do kind of wish you could go back and fix those things, but unfortunately, sometimes you got a lot of time to work on a set, and sometimes it's just got to get done.
Right, the business of it all.
And even as the card pool grew, older cards become more relevant all the time. As the game came out, became relevant all the time. So those cards also they also have a place in the game. I think,
except for Spirit Pippin, yeah.
Right.
Come on, man! Great Wanderer Pippin. That's it. Pippin's gonna go.
Right, and if you get really desperate, you can throw an engaged enemy back into the I don't know. Anyways, but let's see here. There was one question. This isn't a design. This isn't a favorite so much, but Dominic, Dominic from Lure of Middle Earth. Yeah, he's a patron of the show. Dominic, thank you so much. And he asked, was there a card printing or template error that made a card stronger or weaker than you really wanted it to? Now I have an answer, and I wasn't on the design side of it, but my answer is Quick Beam. Where Quick Beam is no longer unique, and so you can use your triple Quick Beam hero deck and then bring out unique Quick Beam ally, and that's good.
See, you're assuming that was a mistake or a templating error, though.
Yes.
Really, I had this brilliant idea of like, what would really drive up sales?
Yeah.
Is if non-unique.
Right.
And now you could have, 3 Boromirs in play or 3 quick beams,
Right. Three. You have to buy 3 packs to get your 3 quick beams.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's like the perfect example. Yeah, that's
But was there anything other than that happened that, or maybe like a typo that made it into play that, that wasn't an intent, like change the meaning of it?
Dominic has something in mind when he asked this, and I wish I knew which card he was thinking of.
Yeah.
I really can't I can't remember. Like even quick beam, like as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. But
well, like how about
okay, no, there's one that I do remember. I will always remember. This made it worse. This made it infinitely worse, not more power. It made it unplayable. The Ravens of the Mountains from the on the doorstep box. It's the lore event. And this is what happens when you have a designer kind of double dipping, right? Like managing 2 different lines at the same time. They get their words confused. So I was, at the time that I was working on the doorstep, I was also designing for Warhammer Invasion. And Warhammer Invasion is, it's a head-to-head competitive game. So it would use language. If I wanted to look at the top card of my opponent's deck, the language would be reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. Or if I want to look at mine, reveal the top card of your deck. Because there's no when revealed effects, right? I have to play the card to have its effect. It doesn't just happen. So I had this idea for the Ravens because it's such a fun moment for me in the books of like, now the birds are bringing the dwarves news, and like that's a huge advantage, right?
Right, sure.
It's just like these few dwarves, but they know all of what's going on because they got these birds bringing them information. And I thought there's an opportunity there to do something clever where you can like reduce the threat or something, but it has to be based on like on the news. So you're gonna shuffle the encounter deck and look at the top card, and you're going to place progress on the quest equal to that card's threat. So it's for 1 cost. I mean, if you got lucky, you might end up making like 4 progress or something if it's a 4 threat card. And then you're going to put the card, and then you're going to put the card back on top. So not only might you make progress, but now you know what that card is, and you can plan for it. There's just a lot of good things going on there, except I didn't use the word look. I used the word reveal because that's what was in my head from designing. So it was like now it's revealed the top card of the encounter deck, and that has a totally different context.
Right.
And everybody immediately was like, this card is awful. Like, who you even do this? Right. And I was like, what are they complaining about? Oh no. Right. Oh, that's right. Reveal means something in this game.
Right.
So I'm just surprised I got past playtesting with that wording.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing too. It's like very early on. So this is something that I think when you're on the outside looking in, I mean, even if you're looking, a lot of people don't even think about it enough to want to even look. But there's sort of an assumption of there's a whole big team of people developing this game, and we've got all these teams of playtesters. But the reality is that for every one of our games, it's typically 1 to 2 people working on that game tops. That's how many people are getting paid to develop that game. And then the playtesters, at this time, we've since upgraded our system where we have a full-time person who recruits and manages playtesters. So our playtesting system is much stronger now, maybe more like what people would assume that it is. But at this time, when I made this card, I think I had 5 playtesters.
Right.
I had to recruit people.
Your buddies at the bar playing the game.
Yeah, and they were mostly just friends of mine,
right,
who didn't really play the game except for when I invited them to test and said, okay, you play this deck, you play that deck.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about like Radagast, like made it through where your intention was he should be able to play zero cost cards. And then I was wondering, and then I was also wondering if Elrond was intentionally like that, or if Elrond was also supposed to be like that, where he should be able to play zero cost cards, or if that was intentional that Elrond was.
I can't say for Elrond. I feel like I remember having a conversation, with Lucas and Nate, kind of surrounding that, of like, hey, what about this? And that kind of ruling of like, well, you're technically not paying for it is definitely a by the book kind of ruling, right? Which is something that I think my experience with Nate is that that's what he does. It's safe, right? Because you write the rules. You don't want to start making rulings that counteract or contradict the rules.
Right.
So that I kind of picked that up from him. And I think Lucas sometimes would write cards that he just wanted it to work this way. And if it didn't work within the rules, he might go and like change the rules.
Except for Elrond, and Elrond does this.
Yeah, and so yeah, Radagast was it's one of those things where I think when everyone played it, they just played it intuitively, and no one actually asked that question of, hey, if I reduce its cost down to 0, can I still play it? Because everyone just assumed that you should, and so it went all the way through testing like that. No one ever brought it up. It gets out into the wild, and immediately someone's like, well, based on the Elrond ruling, this doesn't work, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, right. Yeah, technically that does not work like that. Right. That's very frustrating.
Yeah, I think a lot of people though, they just it's a fun cooperative game, right? So they play the cards are as intended anyway, and just do what's fun,
right?
Which is a great testament to the game too.
Mm-hmm. And you've gone on record a million times, even without a update or a FAQ or whatever it is that you do in the errata. Like people know that that's what your intention was, is to be able to play zero cost stuff. Let me ask a couple other fun things, and let me bring in the guys with this because I've been asking you a lot of questions. But these are questions that I really asked specifically for you. Okay, like knowing you were coming on the show, I didn't ask the patrons. I didn't ask I didn't ask the community. I was like, let's just ask Caleb some specific questions that are just for him. So the first one is, and if you need time, I would be happy to give you my answer. But what is your favorite adjective that you use to describe an orc? Because what are there, like 7,000 orc enemies? And so there's orc skirmisher, orc, there's orc misty mountain goblins, mountains of the misty goblins, misty mountain of the orc goblin. Like, how many different adjectives have you used to describe an orc in the game? But I'm wondering if there's one that specifically you're like, oh, that's a pretty cool one. My answer is the orc arbalaster. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that card is just cool to say. I don't even know what an arbalaster is, but I think that's in the same cycle as the orc arsonist, and like
it's from Siege of Kaer Andros, right?
The Heirs of Numenor and Against the Shadows cycle.
Yeah. So while Caleb's thinking, Ted, do you have a specific orc adjective that you appreciate? Even if you look up on Hall of Beorn, it's like it goes to the limit. The limit is 200 cards that gives you. So if you just type orc, it gives you 200 orcs, and they all it's just there's so many different orcs in the game.
Right, and David, just for your bit of information, an arbalaster is a very powerful type of crossbow, heavy and powerful.
Okay, there you go. It's a blaster. You couldn't use blaster, so you had to be an arb blaster. I don't know.
I'm trying to think. That's a oddly specific question.
It is an oddly specific question.
I know the one that I hate the most, and that's the orc drummer from the Khazad-dûm cycle.
Oh yeah.
Because he's the guy that he has Surge printed on him, and then his when revealed is to reveal another card. So he's just like a double Surge card, I believe, is him. Yeah.
And there's multiple in the deck, so you can Surge, like you could draw.
Is that the guy that I'm thinking
cards.
of, or? Oh no, I'm thinking of okay. Sorry, the orc drummer. He's actually the one that he
Does
gives
he raise their threat?
he gives plus X threat to X is the number of players in the game, which he's also terrible. But hornblower, a hornblower is the double surge one.
Yeah.
But the drummer is equally as annoying because he will just wreck your board state. You have like four enemies out, and it's like a 3 or 4 player game. You're like, okay, there's just like 20 threat in one card.
Yeah.
So either one of those, fragging hornblower.
I'm seriously scrolling through Holobayor and through all 200 plus. Like,
Yeah. I mean, if
What
you
is-
can't,
yeah.
it's fine. I mean, I know that like it's so hard because you've designed so many of them. I didn't know if there was one that just stood out. Like, oh, this is a cool like.
well, we would have these jokes in Card Council where we would have a card like Orc Archer, you know, and when we do Card Council, the way that you do it is you read the title of the card, and then you read its stat line, you know, and then you read its like traits, you know. So you'd be like Orc Archer, you know, whatever engage, you know, like a 1, 2, 1, 3, and then you go Orc, and then the joke would always be add the Archer trait. So it's the same as the title. You're like Orc Archer is an Orc Archer.
Is that how Hobbit Archer got into the card pool?
That is
Kind of
exactly-
like tongue in cheek thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Is you read those and you're like Hobbit Archer is a whatever, you know, Hobbit, and then someone goes Archer, and we're like, oh my gosh, we could bring back the Archer trait.
Yeah, I'm building my Archer deck right now.
Bring
as
the
we
game
speak.
full circle.
Yeah, that's so funny. Well, I'll give you a pass on your favorite adjective. I just thought it was interesting, you know, since you've designed so many orcs in your career. I figured maybe. there
See,
was
I
one
still
that was like-
have like, you know, a little bit of like nightmares about all those art descriptions, because you guys just read the titles, but I had
Yeah.
to write the art briefs for like all those different
Oh
ones.
yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I would just write like a variation of the same art brief and just change enough. There's enough time that went by, enough different art directors that worked on it, that you just get away with writing the same, like a frenzied orc charges toward the viewer with a blank. It could be an axe, a bow, a spear. You just
Right.
change them out, you know.
Right. Large,
But it was always
fat,
basically
big,
a frenzied
you know?
orc charges forward.
Right. Well, you talked about art briefs. What's your favorite art in the game? And boys, I'll ask you that question as well.
Well, we were
Favorite art.
talking about my favorite art in the game just before the show. I unfortunately never made.
Oh, it never made it into
I'm
print.
still hoping to see that alt art hero. But we'll keep them guessing.
Jeez.
Oh god, you
See.
broke me over again.
Oh.
Well, it was your idea, Grant. I mean,
What if I did record that and put it at the end of the episode? Is that something that's going to get everybody in trouble?
You should have. That was the best podcasting ever.
Stay tuned, everybody. Stay to the end
I'm
of the
pretty
episode.
sure-
Maybe it'll be there.
Okay. You know, there's, for me personally, there can really only be one answer, and I'm a little bit embarrassed it took me this long. Probably because I was distracted, but obviously Thalion is my favorite art, and it's not probably for the reason you think, because it's not like, oh man, that's a gorgeous man, I love looking at him.
Oh, but it is a
It's
gorgeous
really-
man.
It's really just because, oh my gosh, you know, I worked at the company for 5 years, looking forward to that opportunity to have my likeness in a game, and that whole time as it got closer, I'm getting really nervous of like, oh my gosh, this is really happening, but I only get one shot. What if I don't like it? You know, like that would just burn me up if it was like, the artist didn't really quite capture what I was hoping, or the style isn't what I like, or whatever. I was so nervous because I don't want to be unappreciative, but if it didn't turn out well, it's one of those things that would end up in my garage. I'd never look at it, you know. But instead, I was able to, you know, request, hey, could Alexander Karks, could he maybe do my piece? And he was really excited to do it, and man, he just knocked it out of the park, right? Just you can tell from looking at the other cards he illustrated to looking at that one, they're all fantastic, but I could tell immediately, like, he put a little extra effort into this one, because it was the first employee portrait that he'd done, And since then, he's been asked to do a ton of them.
Okay.
Because he did such a brilliant job that everybody was like, oh my gosh, I want him to do mine too. And so there's a few of them in the Lord of the Rings now that he did, and they're all brilliant. And so for me, that's my favorite art piece, because it's so personal to me. Like to be able to request this artist who I really admire, and then to find out that he was sort of flattered to be asked, and then he really went like the extra mile and put in. Like, I got so many compliments and sort of kudos from the art department and from around the studio, because we would share these art on the screens in our studio, not just the portraits, but kind of like the art department would like pick whatever they were working on, whatever art was coming in, and they kind of throw their favorites up. So as you walk around the studio and you see the big screens around the studio, you go, oh, that's a cool piece of art. It might be from Arkham or Star Wars or whatever. And so people saw this art and they're like, man, you got a great piece. Like, you must be excited, because boy, that turned out great. And I was thrilled. And then you were there at the Con of the North when, or the Con of the Rings, when the guys gave me that playmat with the art on it. I was really touched, because that was a super nice gesture. So absolutely, that has to be my favorite art piece in the game.
Okay. And reasonably so. Ted.
Yeah, after that, it would be anything by Magali.
Yeah, I was going to say. So, Ted, which Magali piece do you have?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. Do you have the original, or did the artist retain it, or did the?
I don't think I have the original, but I have a print.
Okay.
That's something that they do for you. You know, that they get a print and they frame it and they present it to you. We have like kind of like a celebration where they acknowledge all the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year veterans. And there's, everybody gets to see your art piece. They kind of put it up on display and you get to go pick it up. It's a real fun tradition.
Yeah, fun perk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my favorite arts. So we talk about Magali all the time, and art makes me want to play cards. I just like sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna play this because it looks cool. I think Leadership Boromir always has I think some really wonderful art. We're just like, okay, this is just, he got a new flavor, he got a new sphere with a new ability, and then he gets the new art with it, and it just really represents like this is him, this is legal reading or leading Boromir, who's in charge of these troops and inspiring these men. I think it captured him very well.
Yeah. Grant, what's your favorite art in the game? Grimbeorn?
Well, oddly enough, it's not actually a player card. I've already mentioned it tonight. It's Zenith the Noon. That artwork is brilliant. I'm actually going to look to see if I can get a blow just as a wallpaper for my background on my desktop, because I actually like that image.
That's great.
Yeah.
I had to pull it up here as you were talking about to look at it again. Yeah, I remember, those were the easiest art briefs to write, were the saga expansions, because Tolkien's so descriptive in his writing. I would just copy paste the paragraph. And, here you go, draw this.
Yeah. And it works as well because it's so descriptive. You can actually, when you're looking at that, you know where you are in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of my favorite art pieces in the game, I think, has got to be the alt art Galadriel. Like, I mean, I love Galadriel. We had a guy on the show like 2 years ago that came on and talked about Galadriel, and ever since then I've been a fan. I don't know who that guy was, but he talked about how it was the bee's knees and
talked
stuff.
about the bee's knees.
Yeah. But I have that card, and the guy who came on the show signed it for me, so that was always good. I like the alt art.
I hope I didn't sign over the art. I better have only signed over the text box.
Yeah, I mean, text box is the more important part, but like Ted said, the art is what makes you want to play the game. And I do, maybe leading back into some of this stuff, one of the things that I appreciate about the game is that it's not one of these games that is overly, sexualized. Like, that's not who Tolkien was, and that's not what Tolkien was trying to put out. And so that, to me, the art is really respectful of the intellectual property. And I mean, it's just a great, it just reflects everything about Tolkien. And that's, to me, is amazing about the art.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to the art team. When I hear you say that, because they put so much work into that. So for the longest time it was Zoe Robinson, who was managing the Lord of the Rings line, and Zoe's like the person who discovered Magali and brought her over to work with FFG, and cultivated that relationship. And after Zoe, then it was Deb. I'm going to mess up her last name. I think it's Deb Liebel. But she did a fantastic job too. She had some pretty big shoes to fill after Zoe moved on. So, but Deb really did a fantastic job too. And that's one of those things, they were very conscientious of, is really trying to capture the spirit of Tolkien's work through the artwork. And I think it's a huge testament to them that this game is consistently praised for its artwork.
Right.
Like for the number of people involved, and for the restrictions, placed on them, like the art looks so much better than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? It exceeds beyond what you would hope for.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that we've come to expect awesome art from the cards so much that when there is a card that is out of place, like that's the one that gets noticed for its art. It's not the Magali art or the Alexander Kark's art. It's not the there was another artist that she slipped my mind. Anyways,
many good ones.
Yeah, there's a million great artists, but then and then all of a sudden there's the one piece that you're like, this one doesn't really fit with it's fine art, but it just doesn't kind of fit with the theme. And you're like, and that's to me like that's how it's a good visually appealing game. I have a couple more questions. Do you have a little more time? I know it's getting late. Grant's probably asleep over there, but
not quite.
Not quite.
But a little. A little.
Let me talk for 3 minutes uninterrupted. I'll fix that.
Yeah.
Knock him right out.
Yeah. And the last couple of questions that I have, there's one that's like specific for you, but then there's others that are just kind of easier questions to answer. But I think, as we look back on the game, I feel like as a community, we want to kind of know who you are as a player. So that's kind of interesting. But the first question before I get into that is, do you have any there's obvious bomb cards in the game. Like you designed a whole bunch in this past cycle, the most recent cycle, like the Muster of the Rohirrim, the Host of the Galathrim, these 4-cost cards that just like bomb. And you are self-described. We've heard on this podcast and other podcasts that, you always hesitate to put that huge card into play, and other designers are kind of pushing you towards that, designing that big card. But have there ever been like sneaky bomb cards, like a bomb card that has come out that's like in a specific circumstance that you're like, oh, like if I play Valiant Sacrifice, which is of course that card, and it's just something, draw 2 when an ally leaves play or something, is there a card that has been like a sneaky big play card that you're like, oh, if people only knew about how good this is?
I don't know if there's any bombastic combos that I'm waiting for people to discover at this point.
Right.
I feel like they've all mostly been discovered. And at first I thought you were going to ask me if there was a card that I designed that was unintentionally a bomb card, and I'm not sure. The best example I could think would be like Caldara, because when we designed her at the time, the just spirit wasn't that well developed, and so being able to discard one of your heroes to bring a couple allies into play didn't seem like that great a bargain. But as the card pool grew, you know, that Caldera deck became like the most busted thing ever.
Right.
We eventually, you know, made her, you know, limit, you know, once per game kind of thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that was kind of what I was getting at, was, you know, like cards that kind of accidentally fell into that bomb category that you didn't really mean to, you know. So
yeah, no, I mean, really, aside from Caldera, I can't think of one like right now.
And is there an unsung card that you would like to talk about? Like when you think, yeah, this card, like we all joke around about Brock being Brock, you know, but is there a card that kind of gets an unfair rap in the community, do you think, that was like, you know, like just try? I feel like mine, we just released a show on the Dunedain Remedy, and I'm like, that card gets kind of an unfair rap. It's not that people hate the card, but it's like people don't just play it, and I'm like, if you just play it, like try it. I think it's just better. I think it's just better than you think it is, like, you know, like
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the example I would think of, right? Because I feel like I've never heard anyone just say it's trash, it's bike spokes, I'm never going to play this card. I think you can say there's better options. I'd rather go dual sphere and play Master of Healing or whatever. But there's been plenty of cards though that were just like, it's trash, it's bike spokes. You know, I'm never going to play this. Going straight to the binder. And so honestly, too many for me to pick one and say, oh, this card was so maligned. I mean, every time I would hear that, I would just think, oh, yeah, it just doesn't fit your play style. You know, like
yes,
comes to mind. Yeah, like Tom Bombadil. That's one that got that one took a beating over at Cardboard of the Rings. Those guys really were ragging on Big Tommy B, you know. And I thought the whole time I'm listening to it, I'm going, you know, all your points are valid. You're right. It is not the most cost-effective card. It's not the easiest to put into play, but you know what it is? It's just a lot of fun. And it kind of feels like Tom Bombadil. You don't control when Tom Bombadil shows up, you know, and he doesn't just show up for anyone. You got to be running hobbits, you know. So that's a card that I'm like, if you play with it, I guarantee it's going to be fun. But is it going to like make your deck into a winning deck? Well, not necessarily. So it all depends on how you approach the game.
Plus, you get to sing. You get to sing when you play the card. You can go, "Hey, doll, Mary do," or whatever.
Hey,
I always
doll,
picture
Mary
with more of a southern accent, you know, like, "Hey, doll, Mary doll, my darling," you know, just like he's kind of a hillbilly, you know, right?
He's a hillbilly. He's not a hillbilly. He's a forest billy.
No, I'm totally kidding. I never hear him. I always just read through those parts very fast. I never actually imagined what he sounded like.
Oh man, he's a.
I'll have to admit that seeing Tom Bombadil arrive on a ship when we're doing the epic multiplayer of the Storm on Cobalt Haven that some of the guys had made was just like, okay, so now we're Tom Bombadil.
Yeah,
Tom Bombadil.
Awesome. On a ship, yeah. Oh, I loved when the ships were announced because it's just all kinds of fun stuff's going. We got eagles and dwarves on ships. We got ships made out of ents. You know, like,
these ships were my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And to wrap up this kind of reflection on the game, and you know, you're the designer of the game, but again, we've said it a million times, you also play the game, and you probably don't get to play the game as much as you want to. That's always, you know, a thing none of us do. You know, if I had my druthers, I'd be playing this game way more than I do. But you know, but as you play the game, as a player of the game, not a designer, what is your favorite sphere to play?
I like this question.
I feel like I gravitate toward leadership. Like ever since I opened up that core box, Aragorn, card number 1, he's my favorite character. You know, growing up as a kid, he's my childhood hero. There he is in the leadership sphere. So it was like straight away, okay, this is my jam. You know,
that's fun.
I like the action advantage that leadership's got a lot of action advantage. you know, I've been playing all this time and I'm still not tired of using sneak attack to put Gandalf into play. Still love dropping a Gandalf every now and then.
So funny you say that, because we constantly say on the show how, you know, the core set still has relevance, you know, 10 years after it was designed. You know, like here we are talking about a combo from the core set, and it's not out of date and it's not less fun to play. It's just amazing how the game has grown over the.
I think that's the magic of a co-op game over a competitive game, right? Is that there's nothing about a co-op game that should ever. There's nothing about a co-op game that needs to become outdated.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. What about your least favorite sphere?
I think lore is the one I play the least.
Okay.
Probably because it's like, you know, kind of the most tricksy sphere. And like, I learned this early on about myself. Like, you know, Nate was describing to me the inspiration behind the 4 spheres. You know, tactics is pretty obvious. That's your aggro. He was saying it's like your RPG party. You know, your tactics sphere is your warrior, right? And your spirit sphere is like your cleric, or maybe I'm gonna get that mixed up. But the lore sphere is kind of like your wizard. You know, really tricksy, controlly, all that stuff. I never play the wizard in these video games. Right. I'm always the warrior. I always just love like, you know, give me a sword and a shield, and I'm just gonna go and smash, you know, monsters. Like that's how I want to play.
Stick it with the pointy end.
What's that?
I said stick it with the pointy end.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, exactly. Like the only way the only variation between my Skyrim games or my Neverwinter Nights is like, am I going to go sword and shield, or am I going to go axe and shield? You know, like what?
Right.
Yeah. So I think lore, actually, I grew to like it a lot more. But yeah, just early on, I think I was frustrated sometimes that at least early on they didn't have a lot of allies who were good at questing. And so I was like, well, they're not the best at combat and they're not the best at questing. So playing lore for a long time felt like it just made the game harder. That's mostly because I was playing solo. I think the moment that you're playing multiplayer, then you're really excited to see lore, because you're like, all right, we got some card draw, we got some healing,
right?
You know,
we have some victory display mechanics. You can do all the tricksy things that you can't do playing solo, I guess, right?
Yeah, the victory display stuff is really, that's where I started to get really interested in lore, was when it was like, oh, now this feels fun. Right. You know, when you it's up and they're like, no, man, the door's closed. You can't even enter play.
The door is closed. You have some quick ears right there. So
yeah.
How do you primarily play when you play? Like
I kind of hinted at, I played primarily solo. Just that's how I got into the game. Living in Duluth at the time, the only card game that anybody was playing was Magic the Gathering. Except for the few people I got into Star Trek for a little while. That was fun, but that was like a half dozen people. And then as soon as one of them moved, it was kind of like, well, shoot, we're done. But I really wanted something to scratch that itch. And it was frustrating because, you know, I didn't know about any solo games at all. And then my brother showed me the Lord of the Rings. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's a card game, it's solo, and it's Lord of the Rings. This is my jam for sure. And so that's kind of how I started out. And I love playing multiplayer. It's not that I don't love playing multiplayer, but when I'm building decks, I realize every deck I build is like a utility deck that's for both solo and multiplayer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I don't build decks purely for multiplayer, because there's still this part of me that wants to be able to just pick up and play.
Right.
Whenever. And so I actually do have a very special memory, a couple special memories of playing solo. Like everyone has the same one. Of beating Journey Down the Anduin for the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I was seriously like at my parents' house and I'm playing, and I think, you know, my wife, who's my fiance at the time, was like upstairs reading a book. And as soon as I like ran upstairs, I'm like, I did it. And she's like, what are you talking about? You know? But I think later that year or the next year or something, we were at her parents' cabin, just me and her and my 2 kids. And they were asleep. I think she was reading again. We kind of had the lights down low, you know, at the end of the day. And I'm sitting there playing Return to Mirkwood, you know, for like the first time, like for myself at the table, at the cabin, you know, I'm just a little getaway. It was very peaceful. It was very fun. And that's pretty special when a card game can do that for you.
Absolutely. Well, I had a 17 more questions, but I think that that memory that you have of the card game is probably where we should end this about the specific superlatives that we had written down. But I wanted to just give you a minute to, I know that this game hasn't been on the forefront of your mind. You are busy doing other things, but this is, for us in the community, this is kind of the end of an era, right? So now we move on to hiatus. There's nothing promised in the future. There's nothing not promised in the future. This nebulous area, So I wanted to give you just an opportunity on the podcast to just. The floor is yours to talk about maybe some of the best and the worst in the game, and just kind of close out this era of the game. So Caleb, feel free to just kind of close it out here with some superlatives of your own choosing.
Sure. Well, the best, that's easy. Just all the fantastic people that I've met through playing the game. Yourselves, the Cardboard of the Rings guys, the Great Company, everyone who comes to Gen Con, Cardboard of the Rings, the Lure of Middle Earth. I've made some really great friendships through working on this game, and that's pretty awesome when it starts out as a game, but then it turns into a community, right? That's a big deal, and that's something I'm just really proud to be involved in. I always feel just very fortunate in that regard, because I feel like you guys and the other podcasts and blogs that I mentioned, like Dan for making Hall of Bayorn, Ian for doing Tales from the Cards, and so many others that I'm forgetting right now, because there's just so many, and they're all so high quality. So I do sincerely apologize when I forget to name drop the other ones that I can't think of right now, because I'm Facebook friends with people who do these things, and you're the ones who are really building the community. That's what I think is so cool, is that I get to be involved in that because of my contribution. I'm working on the game, which people are excited to play and talk about, which is awesome on one level, but then it turns to this whole thing on a whole nother level of you guys becoming your own content creators in a way, where now we're generating discussion points and events and swag and Discord channels and just places where people meet. And that was the first thing I started thinking about with, okay, we know we're going to take this hiatus. I know that the Vengeance Immortal cycle is going to be the last cycle in this form. And it's probably going to be my last cycle on the game, probably ever. I don't know. But it gets me thinking, as I start to see it coming, I go, what does that mean for the community? Because here we've built up this amazing community. Boy, what a shame it would be if people started to say, well, that's done, time to move on. How sad would that be? You miss those Gen Con reunions, or you don't get that next episode of your favorite podcast this month. So I'm so glad to see that people are still interested in talking about it and meeting up and playing the game. Just like before the show, we were talking about how the Facebook group apparently just keeps getting new members all the time, so that they're constantly trying to update their welcome new members page and point people to all these amazing resources out there. So I hope to see that continue, and that was something that went into the design of the Vengeance motorcycle. The contracts played a big role in that. It was wanted to give people enough to keep them busy, indefinitely. There's so many decks that you can build now, so many different scenarios to play against. The custom scenario kits that I kept mentioning earlier were a big part of that too. Of with these kits, you can build all kinds of new encounter decks too, so that you just don't run out of content. I would love to see people start talking about that at some point, about what kind of encounter decks are you building, and what's it like to play with this quest lineup instead of this one. I don't. Have you guys seen the Moria ones? I know it took them a long time to get released.
I own them. I haven't.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I haven't played with them much because I feel like the competitive stuff I need to play at a con. Like it's
Sure.
hard for me to get 4 people together, and the pandemic has made things really hard.
But yeah, I mean, the pandemic makes almost impossible. But we did design them to be fully playable solo as well.
Sure. That I know.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because I think the first one was sort of the proof of concept, the Mirkwood one.
Right.
And I think we came up with some fun different stages with different, this one's a little more location focused. This one's like a boss enemy kind of thing. But with the Moria ones, it was like, we have a pretty cool opportunity here with the Balrog to have basically 3 different flavors of the Balrog, know? And I would love to see people talking about that. Like, did you do the one where the Balrog's trying to destroy the bridge before you get across? Or did you do the one where you have to defeat him? Like, I just hoped that by putting out all this customizable content that it would give people something to talk about and stay busy with, until whatever the next thing is, I was also really encouraged by the reception I remember early on in the pandemic, I went on the Facebook group and said, hey, if you want to try something different, Lord of the Rings, take the day-night card.
Oh, yeah, from
and
Way Severe.
And play the quest. Yeah, just throw it in a different quest and do day-night in that one. And that was kind of fun. And I told people I was kind of surprised no one thought of it before because I half expected someone to do that. And I guess I'm a little surprised no one's taken the Power of Mordor deck yet and just dropped that in another scenario.
You're surprised?
Well, I mean, I think if you want to go back and play an old quest with a new spin or a different kind of challenge, like, set up passage through Mirkwood and at the start of the game, just reveal a random Power of Mordor card and, and just deal with it. Like suddenly you have that new element of replayability of like, what is it like to do Journey down the Anduin with Mount Doom in the background the whole time? or Camul the Easterling, chasing you.
Right.
How many scenarios would play so different if the armies of Mordor was in play and you couldn't kill non-unique enemies the turn that they engage you,
Right.
So these were all things that I had kind of put into motion, but because of like you said, the transition I was doing where I was also starting Marvel as I was wrapping up Lord of the Rings, I never actually got around to like writing these articles and posting them on our website and explaining how, I really hoped or intended that people would take the Power of Mordor set and just go and tinker with it in other scenarios, and so, but that's all the thoughts that were running through my head about, developing that last cycle is like, I want to do everything I can on my part to keep this community going for as long as possible, because I just love being a part of it, whether I'm lurking on the Facebook or actually invited to come talk on a podcast. I love you guys and everyone else that's involved. It's just super, super exciting to be connected to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you have it, folks. I mean, it's been quite a run, and I don't want to speak for the guys, but I think I do speak for the guys that it's just been an honor for us to be involved in some small part of whatever this amazing product is. We have nothing but the utmost respect for the IP, and nothing but the utmost respect for you and your team. And it's not even your team, but the team of people at FFG that have make this. And so, to be a part of honoring that legacy that you have helped create is probably the least that we can do here at Card Talk to keep it going. I can't see us not doing this for, we have to get through every card in the card pool, and we only just launched show 180 something. So, we still have 2,000 more cards to go. So guys,
well, that's just the player cards. We've still got the encounter.
Right. Caleb just basically asked us to start doing reviews of encounter cards now too. So, okay.
That was actually over on the Marvel side. That was something that surprised me, and it was like I was really happy to see the Critical Encounters podcast. You guys heard of them?
Yeah, with Vardane.
Yep.
They review the encounter sets. Like
Right.
that's their whole focus. And of course, as the designer of the encounter stuff, you know, like it just thrilled me. I'm like, yes, where was this for Lord of the Rings? Why was
there
more
was
attention and praise for these scary encounter sets?
We did start doing encounter deck synopsis when we first started.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
And
I actually feel like there was. Maybe I'm not
yeah, there
confused.
was a guy. His name is his screen name was Sweetness Wacha-Cha, and he did the Mouth of
Right.
He did the Mouth of Sauron podcast and got through like 21 episodes or something. And
That's right. I
Yeah.
remember listening to that. Yeah, you said about 21 episodes. Or
I think
so?
about 21 episodes.
Yeah. My apologies. My memory's so bad that like that was. Yeah, I do remember being very excited for that, but I don't know what happened. There's always real life happens.
Yeah, I mean, you have one guy trying to bring stuff to the community. It's tough, but Sweetness is a friend of the show, so it's good stuff.
Yeah,
But,
no, I remember that. I'm gonna go back and find those and give it a re-listen because I remember being excited at that time.
I just
Yeah.
really love the name Sweetness Wacha-Cha. That's Ted's.
It's a good
Can
name.
we have a Patreon level called the Ready Teddy level? So if you give $20 one time, you get to call it Ready Teddy. And the tag, what's the tagline, Ted?
Well, you can call me Ready Teddy, and I won't even be mad about it.
He won't even be mad about it, right?
I won't
And
even be mad.
Maybe we need like a Sweetness Wacha-Cha level beyond that, where we can call Ted Sweetness Wacha. Well, no, there's only one Sweetness Wacha-Cha, but we can call him. I don't know what we can call him. We can just call him Ted Wacha-Cha or something. I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going at this point. It's late here, Grant. It's so late. It's early over where Grant is, but.
Yeah, there's no point in me going to bed. I'll be getting up in like 3 hours.
Yeah. But
Champion.
yeah. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us and wrapping up our extravaganza month. We always look forward to when you are on the show, and this year is no different, and it's even a little more special with the hiatus or the break in the game or whatever this is, and we just appreciate you taking time out to come on the show and talk to more than talking to us. You're just talking to the community, and that's we all appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on, guys. I really appreciate what you do.
Okay, well, there you have it, everybody. That is the end of Superlative February, and join us again as we resume our normal format and talk about more cards in the game. Have a great day, everybody. Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com. I don't know. Next year's swag is going to be, I don't know how you're going to feel about it. So, I mean, I'm sure you'll be fine with it. I don't mean that, but.
Is it like it's like a picture? It's my Thalian art, but it's been abused.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
How did you know?
It's all the female heroes, but they're over sexualized with like big boobs and small waists and completely unrealistic. So no, I'm just kidding. That's
I'm all for that.
yeah.
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum when they're like, they're over sexualizing everything in games. I'm like, no, it's not enough.
right.
We need to get Rob Liefeld to come in and do all the art for us.
Eowyn is wearing far too much clothing in all the pictures.
Yeah, right.
Right?
If Aragorn could be wearing his banana hammock in the next art, that would be great. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm.
You should have been recording all this.
I know. This is the best part of the show, right?
We got Aragorn in a banana hammock. We got Rob Liefeld doing the art.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. Oh my goodness.
Images in my head now that are going to be there forever.
Right.
There's going to be a There's going to be a neutral Aragorn. That's banana hammock Aragorn.
Banana Gorn.
Banana Gorn.
Oh my god, I needed this. I have been
podcast goals right here.
I have been Caleb, I have been
All right, Grant, you got to take over. Dave's lost it.
You've incapacitated them.
You've been practicing for this, Grant. You're not along for the ride anymore.
Yeah.
It's right.
Oh my god.
I think you killed him, Caleb.
If I couldn't see him on camera, I'd be worried.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you, I've been moving for about 3 weeks. Like, if you look at my house, like, this is my third floor, like, the couch is all torn apart, like, everything's out. Things are empty. There's boxes everywhere. Like, for 3 weeks straight, I've been packing up, like, just complete, like, I needed to laugh at Banana Hammock. That's what I needed to do.
Yeah. Dude, I know exactly what you mean. 2020 was rough. 2021's off to a rocky start.
Yeah.
Laps where you can.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Banana Hammock Aragorn confirmed, right? We can announce that on the podcast.
Right, yeah. Next year's Gen Con alternate
art
Aragorn.
And the most recent one, he has practice because he's holding that thing, the torch so close to the fire. Now he's gonna be holding.
Caleb, you broke him. You broke our host.
It was a hit job. Cardboard of the Ring sends their regards.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, where's Card Talk After Dark when you need it? Oh my god.
There you go.
Well,
I guess.
what we're doing right now,
Okay.
David. It's all
This
good.
has got to be for real. Like, we got to just get this done. Oh, okay. Let me. Okay, so yeah. Oh, this is
Breathe,
good.
David. Just breathe.
Come back down to Middle Earth with us.
Okay. Oh my god, I can't get enough. I just can't get enough.
Welcome to
Just
the podcast.
Yeah, seriously, someone else has to start recording.
I'll get this. I'll get okay.
Ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't.
It's all right.
It's Grant that I feel sorry for. It's like 4 a.m. where he is. Okay. I know.
It'll be 4 a.m. by the
know.
time we're finished, I tell you.
Okay, I think I got it. Okay. So
All right.
I'm ready. Ted, are you ready? Okay, Grant, are you good?
I'm all set, bud.
And Mr. Grace,
I'm going for the ride.
are you good? Okay.